unlearning our ingrained biases that aren't even like, I don't think people intentionally are doing things, but they just have those unintentional biases. And I think, one thing that people can be doing is educating themselves properly right now, kind of using this downtime to truly understand what systematic racism has done. And that.
Hey there, everyone. Happy Tuesday. We made it through to another week. I think that's gold star worthy, right? But we're looking forward to having Michelle join us shortly. She's going to be talking about all things luxury weddings. And I know that a lot of people really want to be able to get right into luxury weddings as soon as states allow us to. I know that some of your states are allowing weddings, some are not. Hey there, DW. Tell us in the comments where you guys are and if you guys are open for weddings. I know that lots of things, California for one started and then had to stop. It's just a little crazy, but it's definitely something that it's not undoable. We are resilient and creative people, so I'm sure that we're going to be able to get this under control for the best of all of us. Go. Oh, Crystal Ferry Events, you're in Botswana. You tell Donald to get his act together. Yes, Alabama's open. Hey there, Michelle. How are you? Oh my goodness, right? It's just like everybody, California just exploded because people are like, oh my goodness, now we're like in this crazy funk. But of course, everyone wants to be safe. Nobody's lives should be in danger, because we can always celebrate later on. So
I know. The hardest thing about weddings are the emotions that come along with it. And nothing's more important than our health, but I think it's a balance of still, having empathy for those that are having to, do this. And I've had clients who, this is their third time moving their date.
It's not easy. And I think you're totally right when it comes to the emotions of the day. Normally just on a regular wedding season, you have emotions that go like crazy. It's like its own roller coaster on a regular basis. Then you add in the Corona coaster and it's like, nobody knows what's going on. And it's like, yeah, any single ladies want a British husband. So tell me a little bit about obviously pre-COVID, about your business and also kind of how you got started in the luxury space. Because I know that a lot of people are really interested in being able to kind of break into that.
Yeah, well, I started in 2004, so it was a much different landscape than our industry today. There wasn't even, I got married in 2000, and I don't even remember there being a consideration of whether or not I would hire a wedding planner. Like, it wasn't something that was accessible or that people I knew did.
Right.
So it changed considerably. When I started, I actually didn't start in weddings. I started out doing milestone birthday parties and smaller corporate events. And I think that helped shape my kind of approach to planning events, which was always about who we're honoring, a theme, kind of, what is this event about? And then I did my first wedding in 2007 and just loved the process, loved that it was a much bigger sort of event, the creating the connection with my client and kind of guiding them through that process. And then in 2009, I opened a studio called Studio Wed in Atlanta, which was a wedding collective, a co-working space. And, things just sort of progressed there. That was a great chance to build a community of vendors that I worked with, and that, we could kind of come up together in this industry. We could market together. It was a great place for brides to come and find their vendors in one location, and they were all vetted and, really easy to find. And it was around 2009, 2010 that I kind of made the connection, because back then, the idea of a wedding planner being an event designer weren't really connected. It was like either you had a floral designer or you had a wedding planner. That was around the time that I really tapped into this passion that I had for designing my events, not just planning them, and really focused on building my brand for clients that is what they were looking for. And I think that all that combination helped kind of move me into the luxury space. Back then in Atlanta, in the South, I felt like there was a lot of stereotypes of what an event was in the South. And I got so much pushback from my rental partners, from, the designers that I was working with, in terms of like a more modern, glamorous aesthetic
So
that
wait,
I had.
tell me about what the traditional kind of event, like what all your partners were wanting you to do or were used to doing versus what you wanted to do.
So there were big balls of hydrangea and roses type like balls. There were lots of like mason jars and cotton and, rustic tables. And that wasn't my bride. I remember I had a wedding at the St. Regis where we wanted to bring in acrylic tables and acrylic chairs. And I went to my rental partners and they were like, no one will ever rent that from us. Like, we don't want to invest for your wedding and it'll be a one-time thing. And I had to go to Florida and manufacture them for this wedding and get them brought up to Atlanta. And that was like one of my most popular weddings. Like, it just loaded, but it was like it was a tug of war the whole time. Like, there is another client and another aesthetic that exists in the South. And, once they start to see that growing popularity, and, I think definitely like social media and blogs open the world up to people's limited view of what they would consider, but it was a very hard fight for me.
That's insane. So first, for inquiring minds who want to know, so you had them manufactured in Florida, brought them up, and then what did you do? Like, just put them in your house? Did you sell them at a rental company?
No, I actually, the client rented them from the company. It was a company that was trying to break into the Atlanta market, and they were willing to invest in the product.
That's awesome.
But they kept them. They charged a little higher price because it was the first time making them. But no, the client wasn't going to, and I wasn't going to keep 20 acrylic tables. That's never those kind of designers that love to build an inventory. When I very first started, I had, clients that couldn't afford the look that they wanted. And so I would go and buy decor items and kind of, try to do the design myself so that it could look better than what their budget was. And I remember one time coming home and my husband couldn't get his car in the garage, and it was over. Like, I hated cleaning vases and managing product and like just the upkeep of all of it. And so I was like, I'm very happy to have my rental partners and my floral designers that, keep up with all of that, because I don't want to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, but it just shows that, when you're starting out and you have a vision in your mind, you're going to do whatever it takes to get that, because at the end of the day, if you don't have those images to be able to show another client, it's really hard for you to just explain like, yeah, just trust me, I'm going to sketch it out here. Or you have like piecemeal pictures that you put together and you're like, okay, so take this from that and this from that. And they're like, what are you talking about?
So hard for me because I'm all like, that's what I do. I want to do things that have never been done. And it can be very hard for the client to conceptualize like what's in your head and how to translate it in the right way.
So what would you say kind of was that shift of your career then in terms of like you were saying, like, I mean, starting out obviously and really understanding the focus of the client, I think is absolutely important. And clearly when you're working with whether it's celebrity clientele or luxury market clients, there, I mean, it's all about them. And so you have to understand that. But how did that kind of shift over for you?
I think it was a combination of things. It was number one, having amazing vendor partners that shared my vision, and we had a similar type of client. You know, a lot of times people find you once your name is known and they want to work with you, but I always suggest build your own tribe. Like, start with the people that are where you're at and that you guys have that hidden talent that nobody knows about, and you collaborate, you support each other, you help each other, and you come up together. And so I had definitely had a tribe of my vendor partners and family that we worked together, we helped each other, we referred each other clients, and we came up together. The second thing that really kind of shifted my business was I went to a like a business workshop class put on by Sean Lowe, and it was like in a big group setting where he wasn't from Atlanta, but he was speaking to our group, and he was challenging us like, who are you? Who are you as a brand? What sets you apart from everybody else? And I'm like, I am a wedding planner and I do beautiful weddings. And he was like, every wedding planner can say that they do beautiful, elegant weddings. Like, what makes you unique and different? And he just pushed and pushed and pushed. And, he talked about like, what do you love? What are you passionate about? Like, what can you say that only you uniquely are built to do? And that really helped me to dig deeper and kind of put on blinders, like no longer care about or focus on what my competitors were doing, but focus on what I'm uniquely built to do. And I built a brand around that, and all of my visuals spoke to that. And I started getting clients that said, I don't know what it is. It's just when I see your branding, your website, your social media, your marketing materials, like there's just something that speaks to me. And that's when I really focused on event design as my focus. I started doing full service weddings only, and really got to building a brand around like telling my client's story through event design and wanting to weave their story throughout the details so that when they look back on their wedding album in 10 years, like it was beautiful and gorgeous, but it was filled with all of the meaningful details that told their story. And that sort of like combination of heart and beauty is what I really kind of had a tunnel vision to do. And that really like brought the right client to me.
I love that. And that just goes back to what we were saying before. I mean, if you don't have those images that really showcase who it is that you want to be attracting, it's going to be really hard to try to attract that client. So
Photography is so important. When a part of my tribe early on were great photographers. And even if I had to pay them myself to come and photograph something I was doing, it was so worth it to have those images to show, like that professional side. Camera phones are great, but they're not going to capture the quality that a professional brand should have.
and I think that's, I mean, it's such an important part that I think sometimes we, especially if you're starting out, we forget that it's that investment in your business. I mean, those are advertising images that you're going to use to entice clients to want to call you, email you, inquire. But if you don't have those and you're just left to the mercy of whoever it is that the couple is hiring, it might not be to your standard. It might not be to your aesthetic. So that's a great piece of advice for sure. And so now with kind of like obviously celebrity clients or higher end clients, what do you see? I mean, obviously starting out, you didn't start out with that, but kind of seeing both sides, what would you say is the kind of the biggest difference in terms of dealing with kind of higher end luxury weddings versus, kind of your run of the mill regular couples?
Yeah. Well, I kind of separate the two in terms of like you can have a high end wedding that's not a celebrity wedding. I think celebrity brings a layer of um, extra trust that needs to be built into that relationship. Celebrities are just regular people. They're celebrating their milestones. They're celebrating, whether it's a wedding or a party, but they just want to kind of know that they can trust the people that they're bringing in. When it comes to a higher end wedding or event, I think the responsibility is higher. You any project that you do, you should be doing your best. But I always say that if you're being paid to be the expert, you need to be the expert. And so it's anticipating needs. It's, kind of offering that white glove service. It's leading and guiding the client through the process, having anticipatory service. So like you anticipate their needs and you are handling it even before they have the chance to ask for it. Service is so huge for me. And while, people have a lot of talent, I've unfortunately have seen they don't have the experience, the expertise, or the level of service to sustain a profitable business with that type of wedding. And they're eager to get that client, but they haven't kind of done the groundwork and built that foundation for good business processes and systems to know when that client walks in, you have infrastructure and you know how to work with them and guide them seamlessly through the process.
And I think that's such an important point because so many people just think like, oh, celebrities or, high profile clients, oh, that's just a lot of money and I'm just going to get paid more to do the same thing. That's not the case. Like you have to actually give more and know more in order for you to be able to be qualified to do that. And sometimes it can be even more work.
Oh, for sure. I think there comes like a level of expectation when you have that type of client that they want you to be available to them. They want you to take care of everything for them. But unfortunately, and what breaks my heart about our industry are, everyone's focused on the pretty and the Instagram likes and follows, but they don't know what they're doing. And then, they'll sign on to a high profile project and things are falling apart, things aren't handled in the right way. And I feel like they're doing more of a disservice to their business, to our industry, because people are going to talk. They're going to, and they start out ruining their reputation before they even begin.
You're 1,000,000% right. And it's one of the things that I always say, like, if that's where you want to go, that's great, but you need to really get your bearings and understand, like you need room to screw up. And we all screw up. And when we started, it's like,
You don't want to screw up. That's not when you want to screw up.
Exactly. So that's really, really good advice. So when you were kind of looking for your kind of tribe network, how did you go about finding them?
Well, having Studio Ed really helps because it was already kind of a built-in vendor family for me to work with. But I went on a lot of coffee dates. I, responded to a lot of emails from vendors that would reach out. I think that it was about connecting with people that had a similar aesthetic and client and approach to business and working together. Like in this business, like we work together in a very high pressure situation, not always with a lot of time. Like you want to be in the trenches with the people that you can count on, that are going to answer your late night texts, that are going to go above and beyond for your clients, that are going to deliver the highest level of experience so that you're not worried about that piece of it, right? If I have to worry about you doing your job and doing my job, like that's for me the number one rule of working together in a collaboration. So it's a process, it's over time. And sometimes that might be doing a styled shoot together to kind of get to know each other. It might be, finding ways to collaborate. I know as a planner, I really don't like to try a vendor out the first time with a hired client, because that level of expectation is so high if I've recommended a vendor to a client. But I do have clients sometimes that have already booked vendors before they hired me, and it becomes an opportunity for me to work with a new vendor. And sometimes it's a great fit, and I build a new relationship, and I have someone else to add to my team.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that's, the points that you made about, really kind of building out that team and being a good friender. I mean, like, you have to be just as invested. It can't just be like, oh, will you give me work? Like, I just need some extra clients. So if you can throw my away. No.
And if you make my job harder, like, forget it. Just forget it. You can make each other's lives easier.
Exactly. And I think that's really key when it comes to finding those good frienders that you click with. One, yes, you need to have the same aesthetic, because it's not going to be beneficial for you or them if you guys are like working against each other. And then on top of that, making sure that in terms of, that relationship, it needs to be genuine. Like you
Yeah.
be friends with this person. And just like you said, like those late night texts, like you got to know, like, they're going to answer you instead of being like,
Yes.
are they alive? What happened to them?
Worse when you're like, can I get a contract? Can I get a proposal? I'm begging you to give you work.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
No, that's good. Now, I mean, obviously, so originally we had scheduled you to come on kind of in June when like everything was just, I mean, there was so much going on. And I think, now things are kind of like, it's not that they're dying down. I just don't think that they're as, front page. And I think it's important to make sure that we continue the conversation for people, when it comes to, and everything that you said, I think is important to note that those are the same types of approaches that you want to use when you're diversifying your network and you're reaching out to vendors. I mean, you need to be able to know kind of who they are before you reach out so that you can have those conversations. And like in terms of other things that wedding pros can do, what are some of those ways that they can show up for their Black kind of wedding pro frienders, or hopefully soon to be frienders?
Yeah. I think it all comes down to relationships. I know in the South, in Atlanta, everything's about relationships. I'm not expecting people to just be like, oh, there's a Black person. Let's let's bring them on board. I think it's genuine relationships, and it starts by getting to know people. When I have white, people that kind of talk about the fact that they don't know who exists in their market, or they've never really seen anybody else in their market, it's because they're not stepping outside their box. Like, there's a whole other world out there. When I hear people talk about how everything looks the same, everyone's doing the same thing, I'm like, but they're not. You're just not diversifying who you have relationships with and who you're getting to know. I think it can start in an authentic way. Start by changing your Instagram feed, diversifying whose work that you're becoming familiar with, who you're engaging with. That's a really easy place to start. And then from there, because obviously we are in a very difficult situation. It's not, you can't just go have coffee with people, but you can leave kind comments on their posts. You can send them DMs about what they're doing. Just start to develop that genuine relationship. And then from there, I think it's like, when you have a project that you're working on, look at kind of what that event needs to represent and what different voices you can bring onto it that can amplify like the culture of the client, the culture of the location that you're in. I think it's important that we not kind of have a tone deaf view of our clients, of where we are. Like, there's so much beauty and richness in the culture when we take the time to get like authentic voices involved in the projects. And I mean, I'm a planner, and I know that just because I admire someone's work doesn't mean that I'm going to have a project right now today that's good for them, or that, even though I love their work, that we're going to immediately start working together. But if we have created that relationship and have worked together and kind of built that up, by the time I do have the right project, I know exactly who to call when it's time to bring them in.
I love that. And it, again, goes back to the relationship aspects, because I think a lot of people, especially, I say last month more so, everyone was like scrambling and they were like, okay, how many Black people can I follow on Instagram? Like, okay, did I do it now? Is this how you do it? And it's not a different, like, it's not like there's like a special Black Instagram or a Black, but like, it's, guess what? It's all the same. Like, you get to interact with them, and
Yeah.
just like you would do in any other situation. If it's a
Right.
relationship that you want, you have to put in some effort. Doesn't matter if it's like your spouse, your boyfriend or girlfriend, or just a friend. Like, if it's a new vendor that you want to get to know, like, you have to know about them to know that you want to get to know them. And if you don't take that time, other than just like, oh, they're Black, like,
Yeah.
that help you.
And being authentic is so important. And I know initially everybody wanted to feel like they did something and that they spoke up. And I think that was so important. But the real work is not a quick fix. The real work is not, one like, one follow, one post. It's going to take time, and people's true intentions and their true heart behind what they want to do and why they want to do it will eventually all come together. But I think once you know better, you do better. And, people can say I don't understand how they could possibly think that we existed in an industry where all things were equal and equal opportunity and equal, representation, any of that. But let's say they were kind of in their bubble, they can no longer pretend that inequality does not exist. And so I think that, for everyone that has spoken up and that has the heart to change and create real change, I look forward to, the conversations that are going to continue to happen, the actions that are going to happen. I'm really encouraged, to see people actually taking steps to break down those barriers and those walls that have existed. And we've known they've existed, but there was just no push for anything to actually change and get done. And so I'm encouraged that I feel like finally, there are changes happening.
Agreed. I'm so encouraged by all of the, like, the real, like, you see people who are doing some real deep dives in terms of what they're experiencing, learning, what they're trying. And it's so great, because it's like, to know that it's more than just lip service. It's more than just like a like or a follow, but it's a real intention in terms of how they're changing how they do everything, especially on social media, when we can't do a lot of like real life interaction right now.
But also, like, kind of unlearning our ingrained biases that aren't even, like, I don't think people intentionally are doing things, but they just have those unintentional biases. And I think, one thing that people can be doing is educating themselves properly right now, kind of using this downtime to truly understand what systematic racism has done, and that it doesn't just exist in the justice system. It trickles down every element of our country, of our society. And our industry is no different than any other industry. And so if people really want to make changes, I think, educating themselves properly and making sure that they have, are doing the work within themselves spills out into everything that they do.
Absolutely. In terms of like what you feel that the industry as a whole can do, what do you think that some of the changes that you've seen that you're really happy about, or that you haven't seen that you kind of hope happen? What would those be?
Well, I think, initially there was the kind of jump reaction of, we got to do something. And I am not going to fault people for reacting. You know, there was kind of a split. Those that like kind of just did it and they like put out all the blacklists, and it was, you know, it was a response. It was something. It was better than not addressing it at all. But I think for those that kind of had the time to have some introspection and really evaluate, like, what are our brand principles? How can we align those principles with creating equal opportunity and inclusion? I think they kind of had a better approach to things. So for instance, Harper's Bazaar magazine, they, instead of doing a best of black list, they did a inclusive list. And I had a really encouraging conversation with the editors of the magazine where they were, you know, their heart was like, we want to get to know the people that are doing amazing work in our industry outside of the normal list of people that we always look to. And there's no reason why our list can't be bigger and more inclusive. And that to me was like such a proud moment of knowing my name was part of the people whose work that I admire and that I stand behind, or that I'm proud of, you know, to stand next to them in this industry because my work was worthy. Not, and I happen to be Black, not that I'm Black, so here's a list
Right.
of Black people. I think it just like really brought to heart the idea of like, for me, the goal is inclusion and not division. I think, you know, for too long, it's, you know, this exists over here, this exists over here, but the luxury space is a very small space. And I think that in order to give everyone their kind of due, and to, because at the end of the day, like, this is all about us gaining clients and, you know, making money, and the wealth gap is real, you know, between minorities and, you know, mainstream white America. And that is no different in the luxury wedding space. And so anytime that you don't give those equal voices and the equal kind of features, it means that that economic disparity will continue. So I'm encouraged that the view of it, of what I've seen progress as the conversation continues, is that we need to just be more inclusive. We need to be looking outside of our typical list of who we know. We need to acknowledge that there's amazing work being done by all types of people. And I think it's only good for our industry. It's only good that we kind of change the conversation of, like, there's one way to have luxury. There's one way that a bride should look, that there's one, you know, kind of type of vendor that fits the bill of who can give you a luxury experience. And when we add in that diversity, I think it only makes our industry more rich, more interesting, more inspiring. Yeah, so I think the inclusion piece of it is going to be what really shifts our industry.
I love that. And you're like 5,000,000% right. Because that's what it is. It's not about like separate but equal. We're not talking about like, oh, you guys are good, but you know, like you're there. So being able to really understand what that looks like. And I love your point about making sure that when it comes to publications, whether it's online publications, you know, print publications, really understanding that representation matters, and it matters for couples, for them to be able to know and see themselves in what you're representing as love and worthy love. But also just in terms of those vendors, when you are showcasing them, there's natural money that goes into their pockets. And so if you're not diverse in who you're showing, who you're you know, representing that way, it makes a huge, I mean, there was the controversy about the Vogue cover with Simone Biles and how she was on the cover, but it was shot by, you know, a white photographer. So, you know, those are things to be thoughtful about, you know, as we're kind of moving forward in terms of how can we really just not try to check boxes off, but really do the work. I love that.
And I think the corporate is going to start to hold these companies accountable. I think, you know, our clients are going to want to know what's your inclusion policy, and, you know, how am I spending my money in a way that is kind of moving this cause forward and I'm not being part of the problem. So I think for those that because again, this is a business. We're in this to make money. I think it's important for us to um, it's good for everybody, but it's going to be good for your bottom line as well to do the right thing.
Right, right. And that's the other thing is like this is not some like pro bono work or like extracurricular stuff. This is real meat and potatoes. Like this is what you're bringing home, like your money, your revenue. And especially now, I think the stat is like by 2030 or 2040, more than half of America will be a mixed race. And so those are things just to be thoughtful about because clearly the marrying age is not getting older because I'm not aging and I know that you're not aging either. I started in 2002. So, I mean, we've been around this for like, maybe just a couple months, but the age gets younger and younger. I mean, when you start to be the same age as like, your couple's parents and you're like, okay.
Well, and I have a 15-year-old and she is so socially conscious. And, I look at what her friends have done with TikTok and like they can't even vote, but they have been able to create a shift and, affect our president in a way that no one else could. So I think that, that social conscience of that consumer that's coming up is only going to be stronger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing is my son's 17. They have no qualms about holding people accountable. They don't care who you are. They don't care what they're like, I'm going to call you out and I'm going to stick by it because, like I don't need your product or service. I can find something else from someone else and I'm happy to do it. Like it's like growing up, there was always like, you had to have this one brand of shoe or this one type of brand of jeans.
For one company until you retired. Like that was my parents. But no,
the world is different.
It is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's getting better despite everything that's going on. I think that we're moving in the right direction and it gives me hope. It definitely gives me hope. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. We're moving. So
the perspective of a mother is I want to make sure I have done everything I possibly can to hand over the world, whatever it is to my kids in a better way. And I think watching everything that's been going on, with social justice has impacted me in a different way because I'm watching my kids and how it affects them. I know my mom went through the same thing and I'm sure she never thought that, in 2020 we'd be having this conversation. But, seeing your kids and seeing it through their eyes, I think for me, like sparks that fire of, I can't change everything, but I can start with what I can control. I work in an industry that things are not done the right way. I can speak up and I don't have the luxury to not speak up anymore because, we are going to be held accountable for what we didn't do. I want to be able to look my kids in the face and say, I did everything that I could to leave you a better world.
absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and all of the great nuggets of advice. I think it's really important to know, like, these are the things that, because we get questions all the time about like, oh, how do I do this? Or where I want more clients, or I want to break into the luxury space, or I want to do like, and those are great goals to have. But I think one of the things that you really underlined was, making sure that whatever it is that you're doing it well. And you're doing it whatever level you're at, because that's only going to follow you. If you're doing it well and how you interact with people, you make friends with other vendors, you're doing well by your clients, like all of those things. I mean, you didn't wake up one morning and you're like, oh, I'm going to go do celebrity weddings. Like you had to learn that, and that takes time.
That is, social media didn't exist when I started, right? You to find somebody, you went to the yellow pages. Like the internet barely was, past the AOL dial-up. And relationships were key. I think to this day, relationships are still key, but there's no fast track. You know, I can't give you 5 steps to turn your business overnight to a celebrity wedding planner. And anyone that tells you that is not leading you in the right direction. I think that when we build our businesses from the ground up, and you're kind of layering that expertise, your business processes and systems, you can sustain the success that you gain. But when you go too fast, too quickly, you get overwhelmed, you get burned out, you can't juggle all the things, because let's be real, when we are all operating at full capacity, we need all of those systems in place to operate, you know, effectively. But there is when we skip steps, not only does it affect our ability to keep up, but I feel like it kind of robs us of the ability to dig deep and really like build an authentic brand, build a company that sets you apart from everybody else. When we're just trying to do what the person next to us is doing, you're never going to separate yourself. You're never going to stand out. And you don't get in. And I think that, you know, people look at Instagram and they're like, oh, this is a great picture. I'll just replicate this. I'll just, you know, do what they did. That's going to help me get bigger faster. But you don't know all the processes that it took to create that. And you're just looking like somebody else. And so you're never going to stand out in a crowded marketplace looking like everybody else.
Well, and you're going to look like them five steps back, because they've already moved on. And I think that's really important to note, is that if you want to be able to stand out, and nobody wants the same thing. I mean, I was talking with somebody about, they were like, oh, something about like, you know, boho was so in, and then it was like not in for a while, and it's coming back kind of. And I'm like, you know why? Is because when it comes down to like my, you know, like if I'm getting married now, I don't want a wedding that looks like my aunt's wedding or my mom's wedding. I'm not going to have a wedding. That's stupid. They look, you know, that's so dated. I'm not going to do.
Or your cousin. Like,
yeah,
everybody wants to stand out and look different from, you know, even if you're using the same people and you're at the same location, you want it to look like yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much again for coming on. So wonderful talking with you. And you guys can find Michelle so it's at Lemiga.
Correct. Lemiga, Lemiga.
Got it. Perfect. All right. Well, have a great night. Thanks so much. And everyone, you guys need to follow Michelle, because her work is like, it's like drool worthy. Like you're looking at, you're like it's ridiculous. Like clearly well earned in terms of all the accolades and everything that you've gotten. So thank you for sharing.
I'm so fortunate to do work that I love, and that it's rewarding despite all the hard work and effort that it takes. But thank you. Thank you for having me, and for allowing me to share even a little bit of anything that I know. And God bless.
Thank you. You as well. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.